It's 3 a.m. and you're lying awake,
Staring at the ceiling, I imagine.
right, staring at the ceiling, just agonizing over whether to stay in your relationship or, leave it. And suddenly you find yourself harboring this very dark, kind of counterintuitive wish.
You're wishing they would do something terrible.
Yes. You actually find yourself wishing your partner would do something egregiously appalling, just like cataclysmically unforgivable.
Because if they were truly awful, I mean, if you could point to one undeniable betrayal and just say, that's it, you're a monster, well, your decision would be easy.
It'd be so easy. You
Yeah.
could just pack your bags and go entirely guilt-free.
It's a fascinating paradox of human psychology. We actually crave the clean clarity of a catastrophe
Yeah.
because the reality of the stay or leave limbo is just so much harder to navigate.
It really is. It's that vast gray area where you don't actually hate them. Like, they might have looked quite charming at dinner last night.
Right, and you probably still laugh at the same inside jokes.
Exactly. Yet underneath it all, there's this hollow ache. And existing in that specific limbo is honestly one of the most lonely, exhausting places a person can be.
Exhausting really captures the physical toll of it. I mean, society has this boundless reserve of patience for the brokenhearted.
Oh, totally. If you're going through a divorce, people bring casseroles.
Yeah, they rally around you. And if you're newly
Mhm.
dating, people have this prurient interest in your wild dating app stories.
They want all the gossip.
Yeah.
But nobody has patience for this agonizing chronic ambivalence.
They don't.
You find yourself pulling this wan smile when a friend is like, oh, you two look so happy together right now, and you just nod.
You pretend everything is fine.
Yeah. And then you go back to staring at that 3-point AM ceiling, feeling the full, crushing horror of the choice just staring right back at you.
And addressing that specific quiet horror is the mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring a remarkably brilliant, radically pragmatic framework about this stay or leave dilemma based on the source material we've been reviewing.
So what's the ultimate goal here?
Well, the intention is to unpack the most deeply held, mostly subconscious myths about love that keep you paralyzed in this gray zone. We want to dismantle those myths so you can arrive at a clear decision.
Either to recommit with absolute purpose or to leave with kindness.
Precisely. Recommit with fresh eyes or walk away with conviction.
Okay, so if we're going to untangle this, I feel
Yeah.
like we first have to examine the water we're swimming in, right?
The cultural narrative.
Exactly. We have to look at what we're fundamentally taught makes a relationship good. And the biggest pressure point seems to be this cultural obsession with unconditional acceptance.
The whole accept me as I am idea.
Right. Let's unpack this.
Right.
Because we're told by every movie and pop song that the ultimate romantic declaration is, I wouldn't change a single thing about you.
Oh, absolutely.
And the bitterest complete you can level at a partner is, why can't you just accept me exactly as I am? Like, isn't that supposed to be the goal?
It sounds beautifully poetic, sure, until you pause and modestly consider what the human animal actually is in practice. Well, I mean, humans are, by our very nature, largely demented, broken, agitated, blind, and barely evolved primates.
Okay. Wow. Tell us how you really feel.
I mean it. We all carry the invisible baggage of peculiar childhoods. We overreact to minor slights. We underreact to major crises.
That's painfully true.
Our daily judgments are highly questionable. And honestly, a significant portion of the time, we have absolutely no idea what is actually going on inside our own minds.
So when you look at it through that biological and psychological lens, demanding to be loved exactly as you are, I mean, it isn't romantic at all. It's actually a form of deep arrogance.
It is the absolute height of arrogance, given how profoundly flawed and fragile we all are. How could we not be slightly embarrassed by who we were last year, or even who we are right now?
Right. We should want to evolve.
Exactly. A true, functioning adult doesn't bristle with indignation at the idea of change when a partner gently suggests it. They walk a bit.
Because they assume they have room to grow.
Yes. The truly healthy person operates from the baseline assumption that they are, in some ways, unwell. Love should never be this dark, stagnant cavern where we just blindly endorse each other's worst defensive habits.
So what should it be?
Love is actually a classroom. It's a shared space where two people mutually undertake the project of educating one another with immense compassion so they can grow into better versions of themselves.
Okay, that makes profound logical sense, but it completely contradicts the modern dating ecosystem.
Oh, entirely.
I mean, look at the architecture of dating apps. They are built entirely on the premise that if you just find someone who matches your exact specifications, you won't ever have to undergo that uncomfortable process of changing.
Right. The algorithms match us on overlapping similarities.
Yeah, creating this incredibly seductive illusion of the perfect match.
And that compatibility illusion escalates into absolute absurdity. I mean, the working theory society pushes is that fewer differences equal more successful relationship.
Which seems to make sense on paper.
All right, so you start out thrilled because you both enjoy reading historical fiction, doing the Sunday crossword, and, listening to Joni Mitchell.
You think, wow, I found my soulmate.
But then inevitably reality sets in, and you find yourself furious because one of you likes socializing in large groups and the other prefers quiet weekends.
Oh, and it just spirals from there. You start out demanding a partner who loves camping in North Cornwall in September and shares your exact opinions on fly fishing.
And 6 months later,
6 months later, you're screaming at each other over the color of the bedroom curtains. Or whether it's acceptable to use salted butter in a baking recipe.
exactly.
Or you find yourselves in a genuine crisis over differing political views, like the ethics of fracking or local tax policies. I mean, the list of potential differences is just infinite.
Which brings us to the psychological mechanism at the core of all relationship breakdowns. What actually kills the bond?
It's not the salted butter.
It is never the differences themselves. No couple in the history of humanity has ever divorced simply because they have different tastes in interior design or opposing social attitudes. They break up over the mechanism of defensiveness.
Defensiveness. That is the actual poison in the water.
Yes. Defensiveness is the refusal to listen to a partner's differing reality with curiosity and modesty.
Right. It's like a wall goes up.
Think about how it functions. It's an attitude of stubborn pride, a literal shutting of the ears, and a desperate refusal to acknowledge that your partner might be articulating something of vital importance to their well-being.
Because when we get defensive, we're really just protecting a fragile ego.
Yeah, exactly. We perceive their difference not as a quirky trait, but as a fundamental threat to our own reality. What we actually require to survive a relationship isn't someone who shares our every obscure interest.
What do we need then?
We need someone who has the emotional regulation to say, I hear you, your experience of this is different from mine, I am going to think about that, and perhaps I need to adjust my behavior.
Wow. That shift from seeking sameness to seeking emotional regulation is massive.
It changes everything.
But it begs a really difficult question. If asking for change is healthy, and handling differences without defensiveness is the ultimate goal, what happens when your partner flat out refuses to evolve?
That's the real standoff.
Right. I'm thinking of the partner who aggressively resists change. The one who storms out of the room or shuts down completely or, gaslights you by calling you intense or needy every time you bring up a calm, gentle suggestion.
When we encounter that wall of resistance, our instinct is to assume they just don't understand what we are asking.
Yeah, we think, if I can just find a better metaphor or explain my feelings one more time, the light bulb will go on.
But people who aggressively resist change in that manner aren't suffering from a lack of knowledge. They are vigorously, actively committed to not acquiring that knowledge.
Wait, really? But what is the mechanism driving that? It can't just be stubbornness for the sake of being difficult. It sounds like a survival strategy.
It is entirely a survival strategy. They are fleeing a painful past.
Oh, wow.
In many cases, a person's entire character structure, their rigid habits, their refusal to engage in deep emotional conversations, their deflective humor, it's all built around an active aspiration to not feel or know certain terrifying things.
Because of childhood trauma.
Yes. This happens because, as children, they were too small, too weak, or too helpless to face the trauma or emotional neglect in their environment. So they built a fortress.
That's tragic.
It is. When you ask them to change, you aren't just dealing with a rigid adult. You are threatening the defenses of a traumatized child.
Sounds like we're standing in a dimly lit hallway, frantically jiggling the handle of a door that's heavily bolted shut from the inside.
That's a perfect image.
And we're just standing there crying, wondering why our key won't turn the lock.
That analogy captures the futility perfectly. And if we carry that analogy forward, it forces a ruthless, illuminating pivot back to you, the listener. Well, if the empirical evidence of the last 5 years is overwhelmingly clear that this person cannot change and that the door will absolutely not open from the outside, why are you still standing in the hallway?
Oh.
What unresolved, broken part of your own childhood story is being compulsively reenacted in this daily drama of continuously dashed hopes?
That is a staggering question. Instead of waiting endlessly for the partner to miraculously change, you, the listener, have to change yourself into the kind of person who refuses to wait outside locked doors.
Precisely. We have to learn to deploy a healthy dose of life-sustaining ruthlessness. We must find the self-respect to leave those who tirelessly and systematically rebuff our bids for connection.
But taking that step requires confronting the massive justifications we build for staying.
The excuses.
Right. If we realize the door is permanently locked, our minds almost immediately panic and run to the two biggest societal deal breakers.
What?
The ultimate flashpoints that supposedly justify the agony of the stay or leave decision.
Physical intimacy and children.
That's exactly. Let's tackle physical intimacy first. In our current culture, which is heavily influenced by this idea of sweeping, all-consuming romance, a dead sex life is basically handed out as a universal hall pass to end a relationship.
It's widely considered the most unassailable reason to leave a partner today, but from a historical perspective, that is a remarkably bizarre phenomenon.
Why is that bizarre?
We need to distinguish between big R romanticism, the 18th century philosophical movement that convinced us that true love means finding a soulmate who meets every single one of our emotional, intellectual, and physical needs.
Right, the soulmate myth.
Yes. We have to distinguish that from little R romance, like remembering an anniversary. Big R romanticism has set an impossible bar.
So how did people view it historically?
Well, if you told a French aristocrat in 1755 or a Scottish farmer in 1952 that you were going to shatter a family unit, divide assets, and upend your life over a transient physical feeling that lasts a few minutes, they would view you as clinically insane.
Does that mean we're foolish to care about a lack of physical intimacy, though? That feels a bit dismissive of human biology.
We aren't foolish to care, but we fundamentally misdiagnose what we are actually grieving when the sex stops.
What are we actually grieving?
People rarely leave over the mere physical mechanics of bad sex or infrequent sex. They leave over the absence of affection. The entire architecture of a romantic relationship hangs on the psychological feeling of being witnessed, understood, and cherished by another human being.
So physical intimacy is just the most vulnerable arena where that witnessing takes place.
Yes, exactly.
It's not about the physical act itself, but the emotional meaning we attach to the act.
Exactly the point. Consider two different scenarios. In the first, your partner is exhausted, they are stressed about a looming work deadline, there's a toddler crying in the next room, and they physically cannot muster the energy for intimacy.
Completely understand.
But they hold you. They understand the intensity of your longings, and they are deeply tender with you. That scenario is survivable. You can feel profoundly loved even if your physical needs aren't met in that specific moment.
Right, you still feel seen.
But the second scenario is fatal. This is a partner who meets your physical advances with coldness, mockery, judgment, or an eye roll.
Oh.
The trauma of that rejection isn't about being denied an orgasm. It's the soul-crushing denial of closeness.
That distinction changes the entire calculus of the stay or leave decision. It implies that you could, theoretically, sustain a relationship with very little physical intimacy, provided there's a massive, consistent baseline of warmth.
Warmth, emotional safety, and physical affection, like holding hands or hugging, yes.
But if you do eventually leave, you have to be honest with yourself about the real reason. If you tell yourself the problem is just, we don't have sex, you might go looking for purely physical connection in your next relationship.
And realize you are still starving for affection.
Exactly.
A misdiagnosis of the problem guarantees a repetition of the misery. So true.
Now, if we move from the bedroom to the rest of the house, we hit the other massive hurdle, the children.
Oh, yes. The paralyzing guilt of staying for the kids. We have this ingrained belief that we must provide them with a front row seat to a perfect, emotional, authentic, romantic soulmate connection, or we're failing them.
And if we can't provide that soulmate connection, we assume we have to blow up the family so we can go find it, setting a good example of pursuing happiness.
Right.
And that assumption is where we project our incredibly complex adult neuroses directly onto our children. The framework we are exploring from our source material offers a radically different, almost comical alternative.
Which is?
It suggests we stop viewing children as miniature romantic philosophers and start viewing them as highly pragmatic creatures. Essentially, we should view them as guests at a mid-range hotel.
Okay, wait. I have to push back on this hotel guest theory. It feels a bit cold. Children are highly intuitive. They're emotional sponges. Don't they absorb the emotional climate of the home? They absorb toxicity, absolutely. They are harmed by screaming matches, slammed doors, and palpable hostility.
Right. But don't they secretly want their parents to be deeply in love?
If the environment is generally peaceful, they do not care about your inner emotional fulfillment. That is our romantic ideology talking. Let's look at what hotel guests actually value.
Okay, what do they want?
They want the breakfast buffet to open at 7 a.m. sharp every single day. They want the hotel managers to speak to each other cheerfully in the lobby. They want clean towels, and they want as little alteration in the daily routine as humanly possible.
That's surprisingly accurate.
And they most certainly do not want to come down to the breakfast buffet and find a half-naked adult stranger they have never met before eating their cereal.
When you put it like that, it strips away all the self-important adult drama. They don't care if you feel seen in your marriage. They just want the administrative machinery of their lives to run without friction.
They want minimal administrative hassle.
So how does this inform the stay or leave decision?
It means the question can actually be answered either way, provided you prioritize the hotel guests. Staying can cause massive disruption if the hotel managers are constantly at war.
Right.
Leaving can also cause extreme disruption if handled selfishly. The children don't fundamentally care about the legal status of your marriage. They care about the disruption to their Tuesday afternoons.
So if you leave,
If you choose to leave, your sole responsibility is to ensure the management transition is practically seamless. Maybe that means nesting, where the children stay in the family home and the parents rotate in and out.
or keeping your dating life private.
Exactly. Maybe it means you strictly compartmentalize your dating life for a year so they aren't introduced to a revolving door of new partners. You prioritize their mundane stability over your immediate emotional liberation.
So if we manage to strip away the overwhelming guilt about the kids, and we accurately diagnose the intimacy issues, what is the invisible glue that is still keeping people paralyzed in the limbo zone?
Because even when the path seems clear, people still can't pack their bags.
Right. What's holding them back?
This is where we uncover the deeply unromantic, deeply hidden traps. What's fascinating here is that often the glue keeping a person stuck has absolutely nothing to do with love.
What is it then?
It is entirely composed of two mundane terrors: practical helplessness and social shame.
Let's shine a light on the practical trap, because it's something almost no one wants to admit out loud. Some people stay in dead relationships because they are legitimately, functionally terrified of doing their own laundry.
Or navigating a tax return, or knowing how to bleed a radiator.
It sounds humiliating to admit to a friend, but it's staggeringly common.
And its origins are directly rooted in early childhood development. A growing child requires two distinct forms of love. There's emotional love, which is the feeling of being held, deeply listened to, and emotionally validated.
And the second form.
Practical love, which is the mundane care of having meals cooked, shoelaces tied, and doctor's appointments made.
And ideally, a parent provides a healthy balance of both, right?
Ideally. But frequently, a parent who is emotionally avoidant or overwhelmed finds it infinitely easier to provide practical love. They can't handle a crying child, so they clean the child's room instead.
Wow.
The child, desperate to maintain a connection and ensure the parent feels needed, unconsciously colludes in this dynamic. The child becomes helpless.
Oh, so they intentionally fail at things.
Yes, they continuously forget their homework so the parent can swoop in and find it. They actively avoid learning to cook so the parent has a daily purpose in feeding them.
And then we grow up and we map that exact same dynamic onto our romantic relationships. We find a partner who avoids emotional intimacy by hyper-focusing on chores or managing the finances.
Exactly.
And we willingly shrink into the role of the helpless child while they play the super practical adult. We outsource our basic adult responsibilities to avoid emotional rawness.
It is a perfect dysfunctional puzzle. You might be staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., entirely unable to leave a union, not because you don't know the truth of your own heart, but because you literally wouldn't know who to call if the boiler broke.
So how do you break out of that?
To ever truly exit a stuck relationship, you have to purge this dynamic first. You must stop colluding in your own infantilization. The prescription is simple but daunting. Do the practical bit first.
Like learn to do the chores.
Yes. Spend 3 months learning to clean the oven, balance the budget, and fix the Wi-Fi. Once you are practically autonomous, the emotional fog lifts. You will finally know if you are staying because you genuinely love them, or if you are just paralyzed by the fear of losing the maid service and the accountant.
That is confronting but so actionable. Once you fix the practical trap, you're still left staring down the barrel of the psychological trap, though. The sheer existential terror of ending up alone.
The loneliness trap.
Right. The fear of being abandoned on a rock to die.
It is a primal human instinct. But we have to examine the subjective meaning we attach to being alone. The text makes a brilliant psychological distinction between the experience of being alone on a Monday night and the experience of being alone on a Saturday night.
Okay, let's look at that. The physical reality of the solitude is identical in both scenarios, but the psychological weight is entirely different. On a Monday night, being alone feels honorable.
Exactly.
You get home from work, you heat up some soup, you answer a few emails, and you go to sleep. If a colleague asks what you did, you say, "I just had a quiet night in," and you feel zero shame. It is culturally sanctioned solitude.
But Saturday night is a perilous, culturally loaded zone. On a Saturday night, if you are alone, the mind spins dangerous narratives.
Oh, absolutely.
You're eating takeout, you take a scalding bath at 8:30 p.m. just to numb the internal discomfort. You hear people laughing loudly on the street outside your window, and suddenly you feel like an unwanted, wretched, socially diseased pariah.
It's the steamed-up restaurant window illusion. We walk past a busy bistro on a Saturday night. We look through the glass at all the couples clinking wine glasses, and we automatically assume everyone inside is experiencing this deep, perfect, soulful communion that we're permanently barred from.
And that assumption is a statistical impossibility.
Right.
If we possess the ability to freeze time, grow wings, and swoop down into those restaurants and living rooms, we would not see a utopian landscape of universal joy. We would observe millions of people who are technically together, but absolutely miserable.
We'd see individuals crying quietly in restaurant bathrooms.
Or sitting on a sofa feeling completely invisible and unheard by the person sitting 2 feet away from them.
So being alone on a Saturday night isn't proof that the universe has rejected you. It is merely evidence that you wisely assessed the available options and decided to do some rejecting yourself rather than settle for misery.
Yes. The task is learning to become a friend to yourself so that your own company isn't a punishment. Until you conquer the terror of Saturday night loneliness, you are never freely choosing to stay in a relationship.
You're just hiding.
You are simply being held hostage by fear.
So let's bring this into the final phase. Let's say a listener has done this grueling internal work. They've conquered the laundry, they've made peace with Saturday night, they've reframed the kids and the intimacy.
They are prepared.
Before they permanently pack their bags or definitively unpack them, how do they know they have reached the true end of the road? What is the final stress test?
The greatest hedge against future regret is documented effort. No significant relationship should be considered permanently doomed without committing to at least 9 months of focused couples therapy.
9 months is a substantial chunk of time. Why so long?
Because our culture instructs us to blindly trust our gut feelings when it comes to love. But our feelings are notoriously unreliable narrators.
That's a good point.
They are deeply flawed, encoded with primitive defensive responses from our troublesome pasts. Therapy forces a pause. It provides a structured, quiet room where 2 people can finally attempt to define the actual problem without the interference of shouting, sulking, or slamming doors.
And there's a specific framework from the clinical setting in the text that completely changes how couples argue. It's called the blanks game.
Ah, yes.
The mechanics of it are fascinating because it forces you to bypass the amygdala, the part of the brain that just wants to fight or flee.
It de-escalates everything.
Exactly. Instead of firing off a reactive insult, you have to fill in 3 blanks. When you blank, I feel blank, and I respond by blank. So instead of screaming, "You're a selfish jerk who doesn't care about anyone," you're forced to say, "When you disregard the children's bedtime, I feel profoundly rejected, and I respond by trying to aggressively control who you see on the weekends."
That structural discipline is vital. It excavates the hidden emotional meaning behind our most stubborn, ugly behaviors.
It brings it all to the surface.
It allows you to realize that your partner isn't a malicious enemy attempting to destroy you. They are simply a flawed human being with incredibly destructive methods of communicating very understandable needs.
But what if you commit to the 9 months? You play the blanks game diligently, you uncover the needs, and you still find that you cannot meet them. What if you still fundamentally cannot make sense of one another?
Then the therapy hasn't failed, it has wildly succeeded.
Really?
Yes, it has provided you with the empirical, undeniable proof you need to walk away without a single ounce of lingering regret. But before you walk out the door, you must pass what we can call the mandatory exit exam.
I feel like this is the concept every single person navigating a breakup needs to hear. How does the exit exam work?
Well, in a more emotionally intelligent society, Marriages would be legally easy to end, but you would be required to pass a psychological exam proving you deeply understand why the relationship failed before you were allowed to leave.
Why is that so crucial?
Because adult love is, fundamentally, a subconscious quest to re-find childhood pain. We possess a repetition compulsion. We gravitate toward familiar suffering.
Could you walk us through the mechanics of that? How do we seek out familiar suffering?
If you had a parent who was physically present but emotionally distant, your brain learned that love equals the frustrating, exhausting task of trying to win someone's attention.
Okay, I see where this is going.
So as an adult, if you meet someone who is immediately emotionally available and warm, your brain registers them as boring or needy because the dynamic is unfamiliar. Instead, you unconsciously seek out a distant, unavailable partner because the painful task of trying to pry them open feels like home. You project your past trauma directly onto them.
So if a listener packs up and leaves this current relationship without passing that exit exam, without understanding their specific childhood script, why they sulk, why they chose this exact partner to begin with, they aren't actually solving the problem.
Not at all.
They're just resetting the timer. They're going to recreate the exact same toxic dynamic with a new person in 6 months.
They are essentially a public health risk to the dating pool. You must be able to point to one or two profound, uncomfortable truths you have learned about your own psychological dysfunction that will make you a slightly less dangerous, more self-aware proposition to the next person you date.
Wow. We have covered a monumental amount of emotional terrain today. We have systematically dismantled the arrogant myth of the perfect, non-changing partner. We've taken the heavy, societal deal breakers of intimacy and children and reframed them around affection and pragmatism.
And we looked at the hidden traps.
Yes, we stared down the invisible traps of practical helplessness in the steamed-up restaurant window on a Saturday night. And we've laid out the ultimate fail-safes of a 9-month therapy commitment and the rigorous self-interrogation of the exit exam.
To tie all these complex threads together, I want to leave you with one final, perhaps slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
What if the true underlying value of this agonizing stay or leave crisis isn't actually about evaluating your partner's flaws at all? What if this entire excruciating period is the universe's ultimate forcing function?
A forcing function for what?
It's a crucible specifically designed to compel you to stop being a passive, helpless passenger in the vehicle of your own childhood trauma. It is finally demanding that you step up and become the conscious, deliberate adult architect of your own boundaries and your own life.
When you look at it that way, lying awake at 3 a.m., wishing a catastrophe would swoop in and make the choice easy for you. You aren't really wishing your partner was a monster. You were just desperately wishing you didn't have to do the incredibly hard, heavy lifting of growing up.
Exactly.
But whether you ultimately decide to stay and rebuild or leave and start over, that growth is the real work waiting for you.